Imagine a biblical mystery quietly hiding just beyond the familiar stories we know by heart, one that involves the legendary figure Moses, celebrated for parting the Red Sea and leading the Israelites out of Egyptian bondage, yet surprisingly overshadowed in one curious aspect. What about his sons? Did you know Moses had children, Gershom and Eliezer, who seemed to slip into the background of the biblical narrative? Why do these sons, so closely related to one of history's most renowned spiritual leaders, receive so little recognition compared to the descendants of Aaron? If you've ever wondered why some individuals, even in the Bible, remain unseen and uncelebrated, then keep watching, because this story could transform how you understand God's purpose and timing. By the end of this video, you will gain fresh insights into embracing your own unique role, even if you're not in the spotlight. This rarely told chapter will surprise you, encourage you, and reveal why serving faithfully behind the scenes can hold immense significance. Before we dive in, make sure you subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share it with others who love uncovering hidden dimensions of the Bible. Often, viewers decide whether to continue watching in the first few seconds, so we're cutting straight to the heart of it. Stay with us until the end and discover powerful lessons that can elevate your faith journey. Let's get started. Let's dive in. As we begin this journey, picture yourself turning the pages of an ancient manuscript. Each line may reveal a secret or a lesson that has long remained dormant. Just as a traveler embarks on a path and uncovers hidden landmarks along the way, our exploration into Gershom and Eliezer's narrative invites us to find meaning in places we seldom look. Stay attentive, as small revelations can have a transformative impact on how we view faith and service. The story of Moses' sons, Gershom and Eliezer, begins during Moses' time in Midian, a crucial period in Moses' life when he was in exile from Egypt. After fleeing Egypt for killing an Egyptian taskmaster, Moses found refuge in Midian, where he met and married Zipporah, the daughter of Jethro, a priest of Midian. Exodus chapter 2, verses 15 to 22. It was during this time that Moses and Zipporah had their two sons, Gershom and Eliezer. Imagine Moses tending sheep in the quiet expanses of Midian's wilderness. This once royal figure, raised in Pharaoh's palace, now finds himself guiding flocks instead of commanding servants. It's in this humble setting that family life begins to bloom. Today, consider a modern parallel, a high-profile executive who steps away from a corporate career to focus on community service, family life, and spiritual growth. This shift often leads to an unexpected source of comfort and wisdom, just as Moses discovered purpose and identity in Midian, forming the close-knit bond that gave rise to Gershom and Eliezer's early upbringing. The Bible first introduces us to Gershom in Exodus chapter 2, verse 22. Zipporah gave birth to a son, and Moses named him Gershom, saying, "I have become a foreigner in a foreign land." The name Gershom comes from the Hebrew root word gur, meaning sojourner or foreigner. This name reflects Moses' deep sense of displacement and alienation during his time in Midian. Consider this practically. Moses, who once lived in the Egyptian palace as the adopted son of Pharaoh's daughter, now tended sheep in a foreign land far removed from his former life. Gershom's name captures this profound feeling of being an outsider, reminding us of the emotional and spiritual journey Moses was undergoing at the time. Consider a person who has emigrated to a new country, learning a new language, customs, and cultural norms. Like Moses, such individuals might name their children to mark pivotal moments in their lives. For instance, a child named Hope might reflect the parents' optimism amid challenging transitions. Gershom's name, in that same spirit, is a living testimony to a life stage defined by uncertainty and growth. In modern contexts, this parallels how families might choose meaningful names to represent a chapter of spiritual reliance or overcoming adversity. Perhaps a missionary family names a daughter Faith after enduring hardship in a distant land, or a couple recovering from financial struggles. names their child Grace, symbolizing God's provision. Each name, like Gershom's, encodes a story of transformation and perseverance. The birth of Moses' second son, Eliezer, is mentioned later in Exodus chapter 18, verses 3-4. One son was named Gershom, for Moses said, "I have become a foreigner in a foreign land," and the other was named Eliezer, for he said, "My father's God was my helper. He saved me from the sword of Pharaoh." Eliezer's name means "God is my help," commemorating God's protection over Moses when he fled Egypt. This name serves as a testimony to God's deliverance, reinforcing the idea that despite the challenges Moses faced, God's hand remained with him. Think about a real-world parallel. When we name a child to reflect gratitude or faith, that name can become a lifelong reminder of God's faithfulness. Here, Eliezer's name stands as a powerful symbol of divine rescue and guidance. Picture a family struggling through a period of trial, maybe surviving a health scare or emerging safely from a natural disaster. In response, they name their child something that memorializes divine intervention, such as Nathaniel, which means gift of God, or Theodore, meaning God's gift. This tradition persists through generations, reminding each family member that their lineage includes stories of rescue and hope. Just as Eliezer's name immortalizes God's assistance in Moses' life, such naming practices encourage future generations to trust in God's unwavering help. Gershom and Eliezer's roles in Moses' journey were unlike those of other prominent biblical families, such as the sons of Aaron. Moses' sons did not inherit leadership roles or play significant parts in the events of the Exodus and beyond. When God called Moses from the burning bush in Exodus 3, Gershom and Eliezer were still young. Moses, hesitant and feeling unworthy of the monumental task God assigned him, set out for Egypt with his family in tow. Exodus chapter 4 verse 20 highlights this moment. So Moses took his wife and sons, put them on a donkey, and started back to Egypt, and he took the staff of God in his hand. This verse signifies that Moses' family was present at the very start of his mission. Their presence, though quiet, emphasizes that behind every great leader's public journey, there may be family members offering support, stability, and faith, even when history does not record their every action. Imagine a pioneering community leader starting a feeding program for the homeless. While that leader might receive praise and recognition, it's often their spouse, children, or close friends who help prepare meals, manage the supply chains, and encourage them when they are overwhelmed. Although these supportive roles may remain unacknowledged in newspaper articles or community awards, they are indispensable. The household's quiet unity ensures the mission continues. Gershom and Eliezer's background presence resonates with anyone who has quietly supported a visionary, working day by day to sustain a family's calling or a community's mission. A pivotal moment involving Moses' family occurs in Exodus chapter 4, verses 24-26. At a lodging place on the way, the Lord met Moses and was about to kill him. But Zipporah took a flint knife, cut off her son's foreskin, and touched Moses' feet with it. "Surely you are a bridegroom of blood to me," she said. So the Lord let him alone. This dramatic event likely involved Gershom and emphasized the importance of the covenant of circumcision, God's sign established with Abraham, Genesis 17:10-14. Circumcision was a sign of being set apart as God's people, and Moses' neglect of this covenantal act almost led to his death. Zipporah's swift action reestablished the family's alignment with God's commands. Practically speaking, this moment reminds us that even chosen leaders cannot bypass God's standards. Family members may step in faithfully, ensuring divine instructions are honored. It also underscores the principle that behind-the-scenes interventions, often unrecognized, can keep a larger mission on track. Consider a modern parallel: a dedicated humanitarian volunteer who forgets an essential legal compliance, something that could jeopardize their entire relief operation. A vigilant family member, a spouse, or a trusted partner steps in at the right time to ensure that proper documents are filed or rules are followed. They take swift action, sometimes in uncomfortable ways, to preserve the mission's integrity. Just as Zipporah secured Moses' leadership by fulfilling God's covenantal requirement, this quiet heroism occurs all around us. From timely reminders about safety protocols in a soup kitchen to stepping in and correcting an oversight during a community fundraising event, these behind-the-scenes acts, though small, are pivotal in maintaining the moral and legal footing of a noble cause. Why did Gershom and Eliezer fade into the background despite their involvement in the early stages of Moses' journey? Several factors might explain their relative obscurity. Focus on Aaron's lineage. God appointed Aaron and his descendants as priests of Israel. Exodus chapter 28, verses 1 through 23. Aaron's sons, Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar, were directly involved in priestly functions and the sacrificial system, central to Israelite worship. This focus may have intentionally limited the visibility of Moses' sons to prevent confusion about spiritual leadership. Imagine an organization where certain family lines inherit specific roles. By emphasizing Aaron's line for priesthood, the Bible prevents mixing the lines of Moses' leadership with Aaron's priestly duties. Think of a modern family business scenario. One sibling's children inherit the role of financial oversight, while another sibling's children focus on product development. The clarity of these distinct roles prevents power struggles and confusion. Similarly, by distinguishing Aaron's descendants as the priestly class, Scripture ensures that Moses' unique prophetic and leadership legacy remains distinct. It is as if God, in his wisdom, ensured that clear boundaries were set, making it easier for the Israelites and for us today to understand who was responsible for which aspects of worship and governance. Emphasis on Moses' unique role. Moses' role as prophet, leader, and mediator between God and the Israelites was unique. His calling did not automatically extend to his sons. Deuteronomy chapter 34 verses 10 to 12 states that no prophet like Moses arose again. This uniqueness meant Moses' leadership and prophetic gifts were not hereditary. Think of it this way. Just because a great inventor or statesperson excels doesn't guarantee their children follow in the same footsteps. Similarly, Moses' sons did not inherit his extraordinary office. Consider the world of music. A gifted composer might produce timeless symphonies, but their children might express their talents differently, perhaps becoming visual artists or educators rather than composers. In the same way, Moses' exceptional role in God's plan was not a family business to be passed down, but a singular calling that ended with him. This teaches us that each person's spiritual gifts and purpose are uniquely appointed by God. We should not assume that greatness or specific callings are automatically inherited. Instead, we should recognize that God orchestrates each person's journey, allowing them to find their own God-given contribution to his kingdom. Possibility of returning to Midian. Some traditions suggest Gershom and Eliezer may have returned to Midian with Zipporah during the Exodus journey. Exodus chapter 18, verses 1 through 6, tells of Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, bringing Zipporah and the sons back to meet Moses at Mount Sinai. This reunion hints at a possible separation, which might explain their limited presence during the dramatic events in Egypt and the wilderness. Consider real-life scenarios. When family members move away from the main stage of historical events, their roles become less documented. Imagine a historian documenting a nation's founding era. The spotlight is on the key political figures negotiating treaties and drafting constitutions. Meanwhile, the family members who returned home or lived on the outskirts of the developing nation remain minimally mentioned in historical records, despite their integral connection to the central character. This is not because they lacked importance, but because they were simply not in the immediate vicinity of the major events that shaped public memory. Likewise, Gershom and Eliezer's story faded out of the central biblical narrative as they stepped away from the front lines, much like countless supportive relatives, friends, and helpers throughout history, whose names rarely make it into textbooks. Although Gershom and Eliezer's roles are not prominently featured in the Exodus story, 1 Chronicles chapter 23, verses 14 to 17, provides a brief genealogy that shows their descendants continued to serve in Israel. The sons of Moses, the man of God, were counted as part of the tribe of Levi. The sons of Moses were Gershom and Eliezer. The descendants of Gershom, Shubael, was the first. The descendants of Eliezer, Rehabiah, was the first. Eliezer had no other sons, but the sons of Rehabiah were very numerous. This genealogical note in Chronicles functions like a family tree entry that surfaces after centuries, revealing that the seemingly quiet branches of the family did not die out. Instead, they grew steadily, nurturing new generations who played their part in the Levitical service. Imagine discovering your great-great-grandparents' names in old church records or immigration documents, realizing that their legacy continued quietly through your family line. Such rediscoveries can be deeply affirming. In the biblical context, it demonstrates that God's people included a broad range of participants, all contributing in unique ways, even if they are not spotlighted in every chapter. The descendants of Gershom and Eliezer were integrated among the Levites, those chosen by God to assist in caring for the tabernacle and later the temple. While Aaron's descendants served as priests, the broader Levitical line performed essential supportive roles, including maintaining the sanctuary, guarding the temple, and assisting the priests. Numbers chapter 3, verses 5 to 9. Think of a grand cathedral. The priests or ministers may lead the liturgy, but behind them there are caretakers, musicians, ushers, and those who maintain the building. They ensure the environment is conducive to worship. These supporting roles are essential. Without them, the priest's words might echo in an empty, disorderly hall. The Levitical structure represents a well-orchestrated system where everyone, including the descendants of Moses' sons, contributed. In today's terms, they were the faithful choir members, custodians, and administrators who helped form the vibrant tapestry of community worship, even though their names may not be inscribed on the front door. Gershom's lineage is specifically mentioned in 1 Chronicles chapter 23 verse 16 and 1 Chronicles chapter 24 verse 20, placing Shubael, also spelled Shibwell, among the leaders of the Levites. Though not as celebrated as the priests, Gershom's line faithfully served God's people. Similarly, Eliezer's line flourished, with Rehabiah's descendants being very numerous, indicating a robust and enduring family presence. This abundance of descendants suggests God's blessing and the enduring influence of their lineage, even if not in the limelight. Imagine an architectural firm that designs monumental bridges. The lead architect's name is remembered for generations, but the skilled engineers, draftsmen, and builders who translate that vision into a structural reality go unnamed. Still, their work endures for decades. Cars and pedestrians safely cross because of their precise measurements and steadfast labor. In a similar vein, Gershom and Eliezer's descendants contributed faithfully to Israel's religious infrastructure. They did not need to be the architects of the covenant to matter. Their steady participation ensured that the nation's worship life remained stable and accessible to all. Comparing the descendants of Aaron and Moses highlights a deliberate distinction. Aaron's line was chosen for priesthood and spiritual leadership. Moses' line served more quietly within the Levitical structure. This arrangement preserves the uniqueness of Moses' calling while providing a stable, supportive backbone through his sons' descendants. Consider a modern analogy. In a family business, one branch may handle public relations while another works behind the scenes in logistics. Both are crucial, yet one garners more public recognition. Think of an international relief organization where one team negotiates policy with government agencies, appearing in news briefings, while another team works tirelessly in the field, distributing goods, constructing shelters, and comforting survivors. Those in the public eye might receive more acclaim, but the work on the ground is indispensable. Without the logistics team's silent effort, the organization's mission would collapse. Similarly, the balance between Aaron's high-profile priestly lineage and Moses' quieter Levitical line ensured that the entire spiritual ecosystem of Israel could flourish. Each family served a distinct and complementary role, much like different gears in a well-oiled machine, each necessary for the entire mechanism to function. While Gershom and Eliezer may not have been prominent figures, their legacy still holds value. Their story reminds us that God's purpose and timing often transcend human expectations. Sometimes our roles may be supportive, preparatory, or less visible. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 1 assures us There is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. Gershom and Eliezer's lives were significant for the time and roles God appointed them, even if not spotlighted in Scripture's grand narrative. Consider a stage production. The lead actor may draw the applause, but without the costume designers, stagehands, sound engineers, and makeup artists, the performance would fail to captivate. Each person's season and function matter. Perhaps Gershom and Eliezer's season was not the Exodus's dramatic crescendo, but rather in helping lay foundational support behind the scenes. Sometimes God calls us to a season of preparation where our influence is subtle, offstage, yet essential. When we trust His timing, we can rest assured that our contributions hold eternal value, even if they aren't immediately recognized by the crowd. Romans chapter 8, verse 28 promises, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." Gershom and Eliezer were woven into the tapestry of Israel's history in a supporting role. Although they did not achieve fame, their descendants contributed to worship and community life for generations, showing that our influence can outlast our personal achievements. Psalm chapter 112, verses 1 to 2 highlights the enduring legacy of the righteous. Blessed are those who fear the Lord, who find great delight in His commands. Their children will be mighty in the land. The generation of the upright will be blessed. Imagine placing a single small stone into the foundation of a building. That one stone may not be remembered, nor will anyone praise its shape or color. Yet that stone, along with countless others, enables the structure to stand firm for generations. Gershom and Eliezer's descendants, spread through the tribe of Levi, became part of the spiritual foundation of Israel's community life. Their faithful service, even in lesser-known roles, ensured that God's commands were upheld and that reverence for the divine presence remained firmly rooted in the nation's daily worship practices. This scripture emphasizes that faithful individuals leave a lasting legacy. Gershom and Eliezer's descendants, though not in the spotlight, were part of the Levitical service. Hebrews chapter 6, verse 10 reassures us that God values our efforts. God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love you have shown Him as you have helped His people and continue to help them. Their quiet service underscores that significance is not measured by human acclaim, but by divine acknowledgement. Think about the volunteers who deliver meals to the elderly or tutors who help children learn to read after school. They rarely receive fame, yet their kindness, patience, and perseverance cultivate a better society. God sees these acts, just as He saw the work of the Levites caring for the sanctuary. Each unnoticed kindness, each behind-the-scenes effort is like a seed planted in fertile ground. Over time, these seeds bear fruit that nourishes communities, strengthens faith, and builds resilience in ways often invisible to the public eye. Moses' life illustrates that God's calling matters more than human recognition. His son's humble roles highlight that true importance lies not in status, but in obedience to God's plan. Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 to 4 teaches us to do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. Gershom and Eliezer exemplify this principle, serving quietly without demanding attention. They remind us that God looks at the heart rather than external achievements. 1 Samuel 16:7. Picture a family striving together to maintain a household of love and godliness. One child may earn academic awards and be praised by teachers, while another may quietly help younger siblings with their homework, never seeking acknowledgement. Both children are valuable, one for their visible accomplishments and the other for their hidden acts of service. In the same way, Gershom and Eliezer's contribution did not need to be accompanied by trumpets and heralds. The quiet faithfulness found in their story teaches us that even the most modest acts of obedience are priceless in God's eyes. If you've ever felt unnoticed or unimportant, their story offers hope. Not everyone is called to occupy visible positions. Sometimes our greatest impact occurs behind the scenes, in roles that maintain the spiritual health and integrity of a community. humility, we can find contentment and purpose, trusting that God sees every contribution. Consider the person who arrives early to church each Sunday to pray silently in the pews, asking God to bless the service, the congregation, and any visitors who may wander in. That quiet intercessor may never be known by name to most attendees, yet their prayers underpin the entire worship experience. Similarly, a mentor who consistently encourages others in private conversations helps shape the character and faith of a community. Gershom and Eliezer's legacy reflects this dynamic. Their behind-the-scenes roles paved the way for stable and enduring worship practices, even if few remembered their names. In a world that often glorifies status and visibility, Gershom and Eliezer's story challenges us to prioritize God's calling over personal ambition. Their legacy teaches that humility, obedience, and faithfulness matter infinitely more than applause or spotlight. Just as a support beam in a building may never be admired by visitors, it remains essential to the structure's integrity. In God's household, every faithful servant, public or private, helps uphold his grand design. Imagine visiting a grand monument. Most people admire the towering facade, the ornate carvings, and the impressive dome. Few pause to think about the steel girders hidden inside the walls, holding everything together. Without these concealed supports, the structure would crumble. In the same manner, God's kingdom relies on servants who anchor the community with prayer, teaching, acts of kindness, and steadfast worship. They may be unnamed, but their impact is immeasurable. Gershom and Eliezer serve as timeless examples of these quiet pillars, illustrating that divine significance does not depend on a public platform. In conclusion, where did the sons of Moses disappear to, and are they important? While their story may seem hidden, it reminds us that God's purposes are not always about being seen. Gershom and Eliezer's legacy is subtle, but it speaks volumes about God's faithfulness and the importance of living in obedience to his call. Their absence from the main narrative is not insignificance. It's an illustration that every person, whether in the spotlight or behind the scenes, has a role in God's greatest story. Think of a grand choir singing a complex anthem. The soloist may be celebrated for their voice, but the chorus behind them, blending harmonies and maintaining rhythm, gives depth and richness to the piece. Remove the chorus, and the performance loses its fullness. Gershom and Eliezer's quiet roles were part of the grand chorus of God's plan, adding depth and resilience to the spiritual life of the nation. Their existence encourages us to embrace our own place, no matter how quiet or seemingly small, as essential in God's unfolding composition. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share. Let's continue to uncover more hidden gems of the Bible together. God bless you, and see you next time.